brass clock hanging on the wall above the counter reads exactly 8:47 p.m. Maple Corner Diner is 10 minutes away from closing. Outside, a violent summer storm batters the glass windows, and the wind rattles the metal sign hanging over the front door. I am wiping down the laminate counter when the brass bell above the entryway chimes. I look up, and the air leaves my lungs completely. A woman steps inside, dark coat dripping rainwater onto the floorboards, dragging a small leather suitcase behind her. Her face is more mature than in my memories, but her eyes are unchanged. They belong to the girl who sat on the last swivel stool at the end of the counter every single morning. It is Amelia Rowan, the woman I have not seen in 10 years. The woman who left Bellhaven when she was 21 years old. The woman I wanted to run after, but instead watched drive away from behind the foggy glass of this diner. Amelia walks over and sits on that exact swivel stool. She sets her hands flat against the formica to stop them from trembling. Before I can find my voice, Amelia looks up and whispers softly, "I wondered if you'd remember my order." I turn around and walk into the kitchen. I do not touch a menu. I do not ask a single question. 5 minutes later, I place a plate in front of her. 2 blueberry pancakes, crispy bacon, and black coffee with 1 spoonful of sugar. Amelia stares down at the plate, her eyes brimming with tears. 10 years, Caleb. Some things don't require a menu to remember, Soph. I reply gently. What I do not tell her is that for 10 years, that exact dish stayed at the top of my breakfast menu. What I do not tell her is that every time that bell chimed over the last decade, a quiet part of me hoped it would be her walking through the rain. If the person you never stopped loving walked into your life after 10 years, would you ask them why they left, or quietly make the meal you spent a decade remembering? My name is Caleb Morgan. I am 32 years old, and I am the owner and head cook of Maple Corner Diner in the coastal town of Bellhaven. I took over the diner 6 years ago when my father retired. It is not a fancy establishment. The leather booths have been reupholstered 3 times, the wooden counter bears faint scratches, and every morning at 6 o'clock, local fishermen sit in the exact same chairs. To me, this diner is proof that something can grow old without losing its value, as long as someone stays behind to care for it. Amelia Rowan walked into my life when we were both 16 years old. On her first day in town, she walked through the diner door after school, sat on the end stool and said, "Blueberry pancakes, very crispy bacon, and coffee with 1 spoonful of sugar." I was assisting my father behind the counter. I looked at her and said, "You aren't old enough to need coffee." Amelia replied without missing a beat, "And I am not old enough to endure a stranger judging my breakfast choices." From that day on, Amelia came to the diner almost every afternoon. We became inseparable best friends, studying together at the back booth, riding bikes to the rocky coastline, sharing headphones on long bus rides, and scribbling our future dreams onto paper diner napkins. Amelia wanted to study historic building preservation. She was obsessed with old architecture because she believed nothing damaged by time deserves to be thrown away. "You spend your life trying to save falling buildings," I used to tease her. "Yet you can't even fix your bicycle chain." "Because I know you will fix it for me," she would answer with a smile. Over the years, our friendship quietly deepened into something far more intense, though neither of us possessed the courage to speak it out loud. We operated under a strict set of unwritten rules. Never talk about the night we almost kissed on the harbor docks. Never ask why I never seriously dated anyone else in town. And never ask why Amelia always returned to the diner after every failed relationship. When Amelia received a full scholarship to an architectural institute 800 miles away, she was ecstatic, but terrified. On the night before she left Bellhaven, we sat together on the hood of my truck overlooking the ocean. She turned to me and asked softly, "If you wanted me to stay, Caleb, would you tell me?" I loved her far too much to stand in the way of her dreams. I thought keeping quiet was the ultimate act of devotion. So I looked at her and said, "You should go." Amelia simply nodded. She heard my words as, "I don't need you to stay." I thought she understood them as, "I love you too much to hold you back." Neither of us asked for clarification. Amelia left Bellhaven the next morning. For the first 2 years, she sent occasional postcards. I replied with safe text messages. The diner is fine. My dad is doing well. The town hasn't changed. I never allowed myself to write the 3 words I actually felt. I miss you. Eventually, the postcards stopped. I instituted a final rule for myself. If she had built a new life without me, I had no right to step in and disrupt it. Back in the present moment, Amelia takes a quiet bite of the blueberry pancake, closing her eyes as she chews. It tastes exactly the same, she murmurs softly. Is that a compliment? I ask, wiping the counter in front of her. Or an accusation that my cooking hasn't evolved in 10 years? I haven't decided yet, she replies with a faint smile. I lean against the counter, folding my arms. What brings you back to Bellhaven, Amelia? She explains that her architectural firm was hired to conduct a structural survey on Bellhaven's abandoned historic train station. The city wants to restore the timber structure and convert it into a community arts center. She is scheduled to be in town for 3 weeks. 3 weeks is longer than any visit you've made in 10 years. I remark, keeping my voice carefully neutral. I haven't visited in 10 years, Caleb, she says quietly, looking down at her coffee mug. I know, I answer softly. The silence between us stretches thin and heavy. Amelia admits she wrote dozens of text messages to me over the years, but erased every single one before pressing send. She was afraid I had gotten married, moved away, or simply didn't want to see her again. Before I can answer, the storm outside intensifies into a howl. The diner lights flicker twice and die completely, leaving the space illuminated only by the faint amber glow of the street lamps outside. A sharp crack of thunder rattles the glass windows. My phone chimes with a local weather alert. The coastal highway is flooded, and emergency crews have blocked the main road due to downed power lines. Amelia checks her phone screen. My rental house is 3 miles outside town on the coastal road. I guess I'm stuck here until the road's clear. You aren't driving anywhere in this storm? I state firmly, reaching for a flashlight beneath the counter. The coastal road floods 2 feet deep during summer gales. I've been managing my own life for 10 years, Caleb, she protests, standing up from her stool. I don't doubt your ability to manage your life, I reply calmly. I doubt your rental car's ability to swim. We spend the next hour securing the diner and pulling down the storm shutters. Since the roads are completely impassable, Amelia sits in the corner booth while I pull out extra cushions and a thick woolen blanket from my office. Do you still sleep down here during storms? She asks softly in the dark room. Only when someone from my past walks in 10 minutes before closing, I answer. Does that happen often? This is the first time, I reply. I haven't established an official procedure for it yet. The next morning, the storm clears, but the damage is done. Amelia receives a frantic call from her landlord. A massive pine branch smashed through the roof of her rental cottage during the night, flooding the bedroom. The house is completely uninhabitable for at least a week. To make matters worse, all local inns are completely booked by emergency repair crews and structural engineers working on the train station project. I live in a modest apartment directly above the diner. The second bedroom is currently stacked high with restaurant supplies, leaving 1 functional bedroom and a living room sofa. I stand in the alleyway behind the diner, watching Amelia stare at her phone in frustration. You can stay in my apartment, I offer plainly. Amelia turns to look at me, arms crossed. Do you usually offer your spare sofa to women who vanished from your life for a decade? No, I answer, meeting her gaze. But I also don't usually remember their exact breakfast order after 10 years. Amelia hesitates, then nods slowly. 7 days. Until the landlord fixes the roof. 7 days. I agree. Neither of us admits out loud that the last time we set time limits on our relationship, it cost us 10 years of our lives. On her first morning living above the diner, Amelia walks into the kitchen at 5:15 a.m. to find me brewing large coffee urns. She is wearing an oversized sweatshirt, her dark hair tied up in a messy knot. Do normal human beings voluntarily wake up at this hour? She groans, leaning against the doorframe. Human beings who want other people to have fresh pancakes do, I reply, handing her a mug of coffee. I used to believe pancakes just appeared naturally on plates, she says, taking a slow sip. That's because when you were 17, you had zero appreciation for culinary labor. I crack with a grin. Since 2 of my line cooks are stuck across the flooded highway, Amelia ties an apron around her waist and steps behind the counter to help me run the morning rush. Feels terrifyingly natural. She moves through the kitchen with familiar grace, grabbing warm plates, pouring coffee refills for regulars, and handing me ticket slips before I look up from the grill. An old regular named Mr. Henderson looks up from his morning paper, sees Amelia behind the counter, and grins. Well, look at that. The dream team is back together. The comment hangs in the air, heavy and loaded. Amelia smiles politely, but her fingers grip her notepad a little tighter. During our afternoon break, Amelia sits at the counter and flips through the menu. She points her finger at the top item on the breakfast page. Blueberry pancakes, she reads aloud. I noticed this is listed as the #1 chef special. Does it actually sell well? Not really, I answer, scrubbing the grill surface. Most locals prefer bacon and eggs. Then why keep it at the top of the menu for 10 years? She asks quietly. I stop scrubbing. I keep my back turned for a long moment before answering. I thought maybe the person who ordered it would eventually come back for it. The air in the diner grows thick and completely silent. Amelia lets out a breathless, half-hearted laugh. You kept a dish on your menu for a decade just for one customer? That customer was notoriously loud when her order was wrong. I say, turning around to face her. Then you should have removed it sooner, she whispers, her gaze locked onto mine. I tried, I say softly. I couldn't. Amelia doesn't ask whether I am talking about the pancakes or about her. That evening, we eat takeout dinner on my living room floor, surrounded by her rolled-up architectural blueprints of the historic train station. As I help her move a stack of storage boxes out of the corner to make room for her drafting table, I find a small, dusty cardboard box behind my desk. Inside is a faded paper diner napkin from 12 years ago, protected in a plastic sleeve. Written on the back in blue ballpoint pen are 2 sentences written when we were 18. Amelia's handwriting. I am going to save old buildings. My handwriting. I am going to keep this diner alive. Written together at the bottom. No matter where we go, we will always find our way back home. Amelia holds the napkin, her thumb gently tracing the blue ink. You kept this, Caleb? It got stuck behind the cabinet. I lie smoothly. For 10 years? She asks, raising an eyebrow. The cabinet is very heavy, I reply softly. Amelia laughs, but tears shimmer in her eyes. You always do that. You turn every serious emotional moment into a joke. And you always run away before I can finish the sentence. I counter gently. The playful tone vanishes completely from the room. Amelia sets the napkin down and stands up. I didn't run away, Caleb. You told me to leave. You asked me once if I wanted you to stay, I say, standing up to face her. You were 21 years old with a full scholarship to your dream school. Was I supposed to be the selfish guy who dragged you down and forced you to stay in a small town? I wanted you to tell me that losing me would hurt you, she cries out, her voice trembling. I wanted to know that I mattered enough for you to ask me to stay. But you just looked at me and said, you should go. You made the decision for me without ever asking what I wanted. I stand frozen in the middle of the room, her words tearing through my chest like glass. Before either of us can say another word, my phone rings on the counter. It is my landlord reporting that the repair team finished patching the roof on Amelia's rental house ahead of schedule. She can move back in tomorrow morning. Our forced proximity is officially over. The next morning, the silence inside the upstairs apartment is suffocating. Amelia packs her leather suitcase in methodical silence. Downstairs in the kitchen, I am completely unfocused. I burn a batch of bacon, drop a glass mug on the tile floor, and misread 3 consecutive breakfast orders. At 10 a.m., Amelia walks down the stairs carrying her luggage. She sets her bag near the door and walks into the back storage room where I am stacking heavy flower boxes. "I'm going to head to the rental house now," she says quietly, keeping her eyes fixed on the floorboards. "Thank you for letting me stay, Caleb." "It was no trouble," I answer, my voice tight and emotionless. "Glad the roof got fixed." As I reach up to place a heavy wooden crate on the top shelf, my elbow bumps against a dusty binder resting on the edge. The binder crashes to the floor, spilling dozens of old paper recipe notes, food invoices, and faded receipts across the boards. Amelia kneels down to help me gather the papers. As she picks up a yellowed sheet from the bottom of the pile, she freezes. It is an old diner order ticket from 10 years ago, the very last order ticket I wrote for her on the morning she left Bellhaven. 2 blueberry pancakes, crispy bacon, coffee, 1 sugar. Flipped over, there is a message written in my handwriting that I never showed her. "Please don't forget me." Amelia stares at the ticket, her breathing growing shallow. "You wrote this on the day I left?" "It doesn't matter," I say, reaching out to take the ticket back. "It's just old trash." "Don't call it trash," she snaps, pulling the paper away. Tears fill her eyes as she looks up at me. "You kept this ticket for 10 years, Caleb. You kept my order on your menu. You kept our napkin in a plastic sleeve. If you felt this way, why on earth did you let me walk out that door?" The 10 years of restraint and self-imposed silence inside me finally detonate. "Because I was terrified," I shout, my voice echoing off the walls. "I was a 22-year-old kid running a failing diner, and you were brilliant, ambitious, and destined for the world. I thought if I asked you to stay, 10 years down the road you would look at me across this counter and hate me for ruining your life. I thought stepping back was the only way to love you. You didn't love me by stepping back, Caleb." Amelia cries out, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You just decided what was best for me without giving me a voice. I spent 10 years believing I wasn't important enough for you to fight for. Every postcard I sent was an invitation for you to say, 'Come home.' But all you ever wrote back was that the weather was nice and the diner was fine." I stepped toward her, my heart slamming wildly against my ribs. "I read every single one of your postcards until the ink faded. Amelia, I memorized every word. I didn't write back because I thought if I told you how much I was drowning without you, you would feel guilty and come back for the wrong reasons. I wanted to come back for you," she whispers, her voice breaking entirely. "I didn't want a safe friend who stepped out of the way. I wanted you." The truth hangs raw and exposed between us in the dusty storage room. I step directly in front of her, closing the distance between us. I reach up and frame her face with both hands, my thumbs gently brushing away her tears. "I made a mistake 10 years ago," I say, my voice steady and fierce. "I thought loving you meant letting you go. I was wrong. I love you, Amelia. I have loved you since I was 16 years old, and I never stopped for a single day." Amelia looks up into my eyes, her breath catching in her throat. "Are you sure?" "I have never been more certain of anything in my life," I whisper. I lean down and kiss her. It is a deep, passionate, and long overdue kiss, carrying 10 years of unexpressed grief, unspoken love, and desperate longing. Amelia wraps her arms tightly around my neck, pulling me closer as if trying to erase the decade of distance between us. When we finally pull back, Amelia rests her forehead against mine, a breathless laugh escaping her lips. Before we can speak another word, her phone chimes loudly in her coat pocket with an urgent email alert. Amelia pulls out her phone and looks at the screen. Her expression instantly changes from joy to complete shock. The email header reads, "Official selection. Lead Architectural Director, 14-month Regional Historical Preservation Project, Grayport." Grayport is located 800 miles away from Bellhaven. The deadline to accept or decline the offer is 5 p.m. tomorrow. Amelia sat heavily on a wooden supply crate in the storage room, staring at her phone screen in total silence. She confessed that she had applied for the Grayport lead director position months ago, before she was assigned to the Bellhaven train station survey, and long before she walked back into my diner. It was the most prestigious promotion of her career, offering her full creative authority over 5 major historic landmarks. "You should take it," I said softly, stepping back toward the doorway. Amelia's head snapped up, her eyes flashing with instant hurt and anger. 10 years, and your very first instinct is still to tell me to leave. Amelia, listen to me. No, Caleb, she snapped, standing up from the crate. We literally just kissed 2 minutes ago. We just spent 10 years realizing that staying silent destroyed us. And the second a new job offer appears, you immediately tell me to pack my bags. I am trying not to be selfish, I yelled back, frustration boiling over. I don't want you to be noble, she shouted, tears rising in her eyes. I want you to tell me what you actually feel. Do you want me here or not? I stopped. I took a slow, deep breath, forcing myself to break the 10-year pattern of emotional retreat. I don't want you to go, I said, my voice dropping to a raw, trembling whisper. I am terrified of losing you to another 800 miles of distance. I want you here in Bellhaven. I want you sitting at that end stool every morning. I want to build a real life with you. That is what I feel. Amelia stared at me, her defensive posture softening. However, I continued, taking her hands in mine, I also know how hard you worked for this career. I will not repeat my mistake from 10 years ago by forcing you to choose between your dreams and me. Love shouldn't mean choosing between your ambition and the person you love. Then what are we supposed to do? She asked softly. How do we make this work? We stop making decisions for each other, I replied firmly, and we start making a plan together. The deadline was less than 24 hours away. Amelia returned to her rental house to review contract details, while I sat at my apartment table with a calendar and pen. Instead of hiding behind noble sacrifice, I confronted logistics head-on. My headline cook had been working with me for 5 years and was fully capable of managing the diner 3 days a week. I could easily take long weekends to travel. Meanwhile, Amelia reread her Greyport contract fine print. The project was structured in 6-week phases, with a mandatory 7-day administrative remote week between each phase. At 3:30 p.m. the next day, 90 minutes before her deadline, Amelia walked through the front door of Maple Corner Diner. I met her at the counter and laid out my calendar outline. I can train my line cook to run the kitchen Friday to Sunday, I said, looking her straight in the eye. I can fly to Greyport twice a month. You can work your administrative remote weeks right here from the upstairs apartment. We split travel expenses equally. And if after 3 months, the distance feels like it is tearing us apart, we sit down and talk about it honestly instead of suffering in silence. Amelia looked down at my handwritten schedule, a brilliant, tearful smile spreading across her face. You built a system, she whispered. I built a bridge, I corrected gently. I am done watching you drive away. Amelia pulled out her phone, opened the Greyport offer letter, and typed a short addendum requesting her mandatory remote weeks be based out of Bellhaven. Then, at 4:12 p.m., she pressed accept offer. She looked up at me, her eyes shining with complete certainty. I am taking the job in Greyport, Caleb. I know, I smiled, wrapping my arms around her waist. And I am choosing you, she added, kissing my cheek. I am choosing both. The 14 months that followed were not an effortless fairy tale. Long-distance relationships require relentless work. There were delayed flights, stormy nights when cell phone towers went down, and exhausting weeks where Amelia worked 16-hour days on historic scaffolding, while I pulled double shifts at the diner. We had real arguments. When I defaulted to saying, I'm fine, instead of admitting I was lonely, or when Amelia felt overwhelmed by her project deadlines and retreated into work. But neither of us disappeared. Whenever fear or doubt crept in, we picked up the phone and spoke the uncomfortable truth until the air was clear again. I learned to say I need you without feeling like a burden, and Amelia learned that allowing me to support her did not mean forfeiting her independence. When her 14-month contract in Greyport successfully concluded, her outstanding work landed her a permanent position as lead preservation officer for the entire regional district. She established her primary office right here in Bellhaven, taking charge of the fully restored historic train station. Inside the newly opened train station community center, a small branch cafe opened, operated and catered by Maple Corner Diner. Exactly 1 year after her return, the bell above the diner door chimes at 8:47 p.m. Amelia walks inside, carrying a small leather bag. She walks over and sits on the familiar swivel stool at the end of the counter. I walk out from the kitchen carrying 2 plates of blueberry pancakes, crispy bacon, and 2 mugs of coffee with 1 spoonful of sugar. I set 1 plate in front of her and sit down on the stool beside her with the second. Amelia looks at the second plate in surprise. 2 orders. I'm not letting you eat alone anymore, I say, taking her hand across the counter. Amelia reaches into her coat pocket and pulls out that yellowed order ticket from 10 years ago. She takes a blue pen, flips the paper over, and writes a new line directly beneath "Please don't forget me. This time, stay and listen." I take the pen from her hand and write my response beneath hers. I am never closing my mouth again. Real love is not about standing back and calling your silence a sacrifice. Mature love is about building a space where both people can speak their truth, pursue their dreams, and choose each other every single day. If the person you never stopped loving walked back into your life after 10 years, would you keep hiding behind the safety of silence? Or would you speak the truth and give both of you the chance to choose? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.